What is going on, RotoGrinders? Dean here. It's Dean7904 if you want to get all technical on the DFS streets. Live tonight talking some Tennessee Titans, some Indianapolis Colts, Showdown season with toe tag and Tambo. Tambo, we didn't talk about this pre-show. We talked about how much there's no good plays in this slate, but I'm curious your thoughts. I think if you was a golf guy in my brain, I know you could do more than one thing. You can be a specialist in different sports. How did the golf go for you today?
So far, so good, man. It's an early start, but I got a lot of people victory lapping things and seen a lot of things out there. They forget it's, we're 3/4 of the way through round one. So I would suspect a lot of things to change at a course like Augusta. And like you said, now we're talking football and you get here. And I don't know if it's that there's not any good plays. It might be that there's too many. In Showdown where you can sort of play anyone, the old blender head style, and just play whoever you want. It's that there's so many guys, man, that it could be this guy, it could be that guy. What are we setting up for rules and groups and all this stuff? So it's a fun one to break down. What do you see happening here with the game tonight, Dean? What's your thoughts?
All right, so we should knock out the actives and actives. I think that's worth mentioning. We can bust out the body parts. Sure, why not? Adam Humphries is not playing tonight. He's out with the head. He's got a concussion. McCole Pruitt is not playing. He's got a knee. That should, in theory, potentially bump up Ferkser to some degree. They run some more 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets, and he's kind of sort of somewhat interesting to some degree. Jack Doyle, the Colts tight end, is out. He's got a concussion as well. Mo Alley Cox in. He's got a knee, but he's expected to play. And then T.Y. Hilton, despite the fact he has a groin, he's going to play with that groin, so he's good to go tonight. Can we just talk about this line, by the way? It's kind of – I thought this line is a little weird, and I know it's shifted a little bit throughout the week. Indianapolis right now, last I saw, 1-point favorite in Tennessee, 48.5 as far as the total. I feel like – I don't know. I mean, the Colts are a well-coached team. They feel a little bit like overachievers. I know our defense has been spectacular this year, and we'll dig into that as well. But they haven't really played anybody. But anybody they've played, they've been great. Is that line wrong, or is that just me? I feel like the Tennessee should be a slight favorite.
I don't know. I think that the line is set up because nobody knows, and they just want to make sure, as always in Vegas, they want to make sure the action is balanced. And it's like you just said, I don't know. I've got some, original builds here. We always get on this show to get out of here a little bit before we, so we can finish up our lineups, as can everybody else. And, I've got some Titans smash lineups. I've got some Colts smash lineups, and then I've got some mashups of the two of them because it's honestly too tough to tell this one. My lean though, Dean, if you want it, would be Tennessee Titans take the game. So I do like them as the quote unquote underdog here. It's just my thoughts. I do like having them.
Yeah. Hey, YouTube, we have you guys up. So if you guys say anything interesting, Devin, our fabulous multitasking producer, if it gets our attention, he'll throw you guys up on the screen and we'll talk about that as well. While you're here, like, subscribe, the whole deal. We much appreciate that. It keeps the lights on. It keeps these shows free. Tambo's going to be showing off one of our tools here at RotoGrinders, the lineup HQ. I don't know if you're going to be building stuff throughout, just kind of jumping through as far as the building process. We're going to focus mainly on DK. We'll touch on FanDuel to some degree as well. And we're happy to answer questions from both sites as we plow through this show. If you want to use that tool at your own leisure, the lineup HQ tool, you can get there's going to be right now 3, 2, 1. There you go. The promo code just dropped there from Devin. Get $5 off your first month. That's core for football, baseball, basketball, and golf. You could have got yourself a lot of golf takes. And I don't even know how to sweat golf because I think my teams are doing okay, but I don't know when I start sweating golf. And like you said, it's only 3/4 of the way done. We don't start sweating golf until Saturday? What are the official rules?
Sunday with 9 holes is probably a good time to start. And at Augusta, the last time they played it was 4 guys going in the water on hole 12 when Tiger took it down in the end. So I'm not sweating it anytime soon. I can tell you that much.
Okay, so tonight's slate, and I was kind of sort of half joking when I was talking about this game, and we talked about it briefly before the show, and I was like, I don't think there's any good plays, and I'm pretty you got to play, you got to fill your roster out, and you might as well play the good ones, the best of the worst options. So Indianapolis has been an absolutely spectacular defense this year. If you check out the DVOA stuff, they're second best in the season when it comes to the run, fifth best against the pass. If you want to break it down by position, this is DK fantasy points per game. Indianapolis has given up the third least amount of DK fantasy points per game to running backs. Indianapolis is giving up the second least amount of DK fantasy points to tight ends. Indianapolis has given up the least amount of fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. And we both like the Tennessee side. The Tennessee side is more predictable. It's more obvious, with Henry and Brown. Indianapolis, it's especially with Hilton thrown back in there. They have three running backs that, like, I was looking at I was on the Gridiron IQ, and they all basically played 33% of the snaps last week. Like, for real, like, what do I do with that? I have no idea. Yeah. They have 4 or 5 wide receivers. They have several tight ends. Nobody gets like 20% usage. So yeah, you tell me, give me the overview on the slate, because my overview is the slate is just, it's just a tough game. There's no quote unquote obvious good play, which I think a tournament player like yourself is probably going to embrace that and use leverage and take advantage of ownership projections and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's the key, what you just mentioned there. Ownership projections are big for the reason of leverage. Like, you can sort of see where everybody's going, but also it's going to come down on a slate like this, Dean, to a lot of conviction. So yes, it's takes and whatever you want to call it that we're going to be going through here. But in the end, you've got to fill your roster out. Like you said, it looks like, if you just go back here, and I'm using the tool to look at it, Tannehill, 74%, Derrick Henry, 62%, AJ Brown, 58%. And then it gets a little dispersed at the tight end position. You talked about it already, but with Mo Alley Cox being active, that sort of changes things a little bit. But like you said, in Indianapolis, 3 different running backs here we could talk about. Even at running back for you mentioned on Twitter just now, there's Foreman and McNichols, and they've been sort of phasing out Henry a little bit. And we know, normally Henry is a conversation on main slate around, he's got no upside because he doesn't catch passes. Well, he's, the number 1 running back on this slate, whether you like it or not. The matchup's not great. Nothing's great. But at the same time, he's the guy that you would expect. And what if AJ Brown is, 2 passer interference plays, and then boom, it's 2 touchdowns and Henry's just slamming in. So it's tougher to avoid a guy like him on a slate, 1-game slate, single game. It's how you go about using him. I'm not sure your thoughts on Derrick Henry. And then, on top of that, Derrick Henry in the captain. And then maybe you can segue into some other captains you might like, if not. So where are you at with Derrick Henry on this slate?
Yeah. So it's like, I don't like the matchup, but the opportunity for sure is going to be there. He probably touches the ball 20 to 25 times, maybe even more, especially if they're ahead. Maybe we get upwards of 30. It's a bad matchup, but I think it's a case of raw points, right? It's not, like you said, this game was on Sunday. This would be mostly ignored. Just wouldn't be going down. But let me ask you this: as far as you mentioned, as far as the captain, and like, is it kind of like a half a fade? Is that a way of saying that if you throw him in as your flex and you don't put him in captain, like, is that sort of like a hedge to some degree?
It kind of is, but kind of is. Like, I think that's a good way to go about it, to be honest, because I think it just becomes, like you said, when people are looking at raw points and breaking it down, and especially if they're building a Tennessee onslaught or a 4-2 or something like that, where they're really loading up on the Titans side, I think the natural thought process is Derrick Henry or AJ Brown. That's pretty much what your 2 captains are going to look like from the Tennessee side as far as ownership goes. Then you can get to the next level of, okay, I could put Corey Davis in there. And then your thought is, okay, if Corey Davis, for example, here, I like Corey Davis in the captain. I don't think it's sneaky by any means. They're only going to the 3rd degree here, getting off the top 2. But what I would say is my thoughts would be, if I put Corey Davis in the captain, maybe leave out AJ Brown, who, if you go over here in lineup HQ, see is almost 60% owned here, 57.6. So then I've got, I could go Tannehill, I can go Henry, and then start messing around with some of these cheaper Indianapolis pass catchers, if that's how I'm looking at the game script for that particular build or for a set of my particular builds. And the one thing that I think about is, now you've got AJ Brown completely off your lineup as likely one of the highest owned guys on the slate, at least at wide receiver he is. And then you've got Henry into your flex spot, so that, yes, you're still capitalizing on him, but if he's not the captain for the night over on here on DraftKings, then you're probably better off that way as well. He probably still does something, right? What are the chances he does nothing? It is Derrick Henry. Some would say look back just to Sunday where he pretty much did nothing. But like you said, this is a single game slate. If it was on the main, we'd be ignoring him completely. Here we are going to look to push some of those raw points in. And I think having the quarterback, Henry, and a pass catcher like Davis, maybe, you want to have your Cameron Batson takes, you can go to that next. But I think, this is where you're going to be able to get unique. And just going off of a guy like AJ Brown and pushing Henry out of the captain slot, you're already going to be a little bit different. You'll still have to leverage up throughout the rest of your lineup as you're building it.
Yeah, and I think there's scenarios where Henry, like, quote unquote, doesn't hit value and he puts up maybe like 14 and a half DK points and he still lands in the optimal. Like, I think that's still possible. So it's not like a good dollar for dollar play, but also you can't take these dollars home with you. And of course, there's obviously, for tournaments, you can like leave 3, 4, 5K on the table if you want to get different, get goofy, try to be and I should say the big contest on DK, the one that has 35, 40%, whatever it is, the first place, $15 buy in the league. I don't play that. Yep. I don't like those kind of contests. That's not for me. I like single entry. I like the 3 entries. I like the 20 entry max. I like a flat payout. So I'm not dabbling in that world. We should tell. What are you doing tonight? I assume you're dabbling in the all or nothing contest.
Yeah, that's what I'm playing. So I'm not sure exactly. I think I've got 50 in there right now. So, it's probably where I'll stick around. I don't really like to max it as much just because I know it's super high variance. I kind of feel like in Showdown, especially, you're going to play a couple different angles, but I don't like to have like 50 random lineups. I'll have like 10 going this way or 15 going this way, 15 going that way, and then maybe the last 20 another way. Look for 3 sort of game scripts, get around them, and then go from there. So, I'm going to play that tournament over everything else. I think it's if you have it, you have it. If you don't, you don't. We know what the variance is going in. Maybe once in a while I'll play something like the 180 and just, if I have a lineup I really love, but this is not the slate for that. Like you said, there's just so many guys, don't love any of them. I have conviction on some ways that I'm going to build in certain guys as we'll get into it here, but not really a set path that I see this game going. I could definitely see Indy smashing. I could definitely see the Titans smashing. And then we could see, a pretty ugly back and forth game. That's sort of the 3 angles that I see here.
I feel like it's most likely it stays close. That's sort of my thought process. And I think it's going to be a single, not a double digit win. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm just taking a look here at the chat. Only Ruben said he purchased a premium today. He wanted the $5 off. Devin, if you can get on that, hook this guy up, man, make it happen. Give him the $5. There you go. Email support will take care of that. Brandon Rogers in chat talking about, terrible conversation. Corey Davis playing for his brother. His brother died of cancer yesterday, which is awful. Condolences to him and his family, obviously. And it looks like he's going to give it a go. He's playing tonight. And I know people like their narrative streets. I don't like to go down narrative street when it comes to stuff like this, but, consider that however you want. We like him as is. I like Davis as well, too. I think he's an interesting pivot away from Brown. So I ran 200 lineups on our lineup HQ for DK, and I added a little bit of variance, just add some variance to like 10, 12%. Is there a certain variance number you like to pick or when you adjust that stuff?
Yeah, I'll mess around a little bit more so for the main slate. Like here, like you said, I'm just building off what my game set of what I think is going to happen. So then I talk about this often on here with Carlucci, and we'll go through it. But normally when I build and get to my lineups, I call it these days, Dean, virtual hand building, because I'm basically using lineup HQ to get all the lineups in front of me. And then I'm just going through and using the save feature, right? If I like a lineup where I think it could set up for that within the game script that I'm going with. So that's sort of how I do it. I just, I'll mess around with it too. I was, showing this off the last couple of weeks, but if you've got the sidebar up here, I'll turn it off in a minute to make it better for everyone's viewing experience. But, I was just looking at it with Davis, Tannehill, Henry. I can sort of get an idea too of what the builds will come out like and what, what I'm thinking about, what will this be like when I'm building? So maybe I'll do this and then I'll go over to wide receiver, turn off AJ Brown. I can just X him out. He goes to excluded. I can go back here to build rules and go to my lineups and build them out. And then what I'll do is I'll just look at them under my lineups and see what it looks like without him in there and then pick a few and save them that way. So that's sort of how I go about it. You can see with this build type, you've still got 5,400 per player. So I guess the idea would just be to show off here quick is if you wanted to plug in, the Titans defense, you've got even more money to play with, but you could build up for a nice little onslaught here if you wanted with Tennessee and add something else in and then still get somebody from the Colts where you need to fill it out on the other side and you're just on your way to a unique build. Of course, with Showdown, always leaving money on the table, never a bad idea, especially in these larger field contests that we're talking about.
So one of the points I was getting at before I sidetracked and asked you a question, I thought just as interesting. I ran my 200 lineups, optimal lineups on DK. Obviously, you don't just like run an optimal and just that's what you play. Like that's not how you win tournaments. So let me see if I can count this correctly. Phillip Rivers is the guy that's popping up in the most optimal lineups on DK at 64% out of 200, right? Then it's just a slew of Titans: AJ Brown, Tannehill, Ferkser, Henry, Davis, Batson. Then we get to another Colt, Blankenship and his cool goggles. Then 2 more Titans, Tannehill and Gostkowski. It's just interesting that like the optimals are spitting out Titan onslaught, and it's probably not going to be a Titan onslaught. It may, but like if people are just using straight like projections, I think we're going to have 5-1 Titans. So that's kind of what I'm looking at as far as optimals, just Rivers with a bunch of Titans, and which also kind of makes sense because the Colts is just so much murkier. We'll talk about it in a second. It's right. Good luck picking the right running back. Good luck picking the right receiver. We got T.Y. Hilton back in. Of course, there's Pascal, there's Johnson, there's Pittman. Burton and Mo Alley Cox are still lurking. Several tight ends to pick from. And what is the exacta box? What is the Indianapolis Colts exacta box for running backs and receivers tonight? Because I just throw my hands up. I don't know.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I do think it's interesting. A couple of interesting plays that would stand out is, some of the workload lately. If you look here, Jonathan Taylor's priced way up, but it's actually been Wilkins getting the work lately for much cheaper. So I think Wilkins stands out for me there. And then you go over here. I don't know if this is a mega mind or something like, T.Y. Hilton I think T.Y. Hilton stands out to a lot of people because, and I don't think it's as sneaky as what people might think. So therefore, you'll see people mention Hilton quite a bit, but it could be, Pittman. It could be Pascal. Like I wouldn't hate those guys, but the guy I really like here is actually, if we flip over to tight end, I know we just got the Mo Alley Cox news, but I still like Trey Burton. I've been on him. You're trying to chase him here a little bit these last couple of weeks. Nothing's really worked out yet. Get the island game. I always feel like you get the flop lag on the island games. Well, of course it happens now when I needed it last week, or it was on, main slate where I had him and it would have been huge. So I'm going to go with Burton, Pascal, Pittman, and Wilkins. Those are sort of the 4 guys I'm keying in on the Indianapolis side. Again, it's all conviction, takes, whatever you want to call it. It's hard to tell, but you'll have to mix them up that way. And then we've talked about this in the past. It's a premium thing. So again, I know producer Devin already chucked it in there for the $5 off, but Eric Beimfor, I don't know if you ever read this article, Dean, but he does the Slate IQ article.
Yeah.
And what I love most about it is the leverage situations. So he pulls out what some of the leverage looks like for the slate. And I guess we shouldn't probably talk about it every week because people just say, I'm going to tune into the free show and I get the goods every time. But I will say this, the one piece that stands out, he really likes, his numbers, his backtracking and going through it when he reverse engineers sort of similar type games, really likes a 4-2 here for this week. So just something to be said about, to your point you just mentioned, of how we're loading up all these Titans onslaughts. I really do think the 4-2 makes sense. And like you said, it can still work. You think it's going to be a closer game. I kind of think it goes one of those 3. I don't think we see a shootout personally. I don't know about you, but I think it's either one team smashes, the other team smashes, or an ugly, sloppy, classic Thursday game that we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
That's sort of the 3 I'm looking at more than I see a shootout happening here. But hey, we've seen crazier stuff. I think it was even Eric himself that mentioned on Twitter last week, every game I think is going to be good turns out to be terrible. And every game I think is going to be terrible turns out to be, great. So, great to him and to us is when there's a lot of fantasy output. Great to me is getting everything right and winning a tournament. So I really don't care how it happens. I'll build for my ways that I'm thinking about it, but it's the classic stuff that everybody knows. Build for what you think is going to happen. David Kelly mentions in the chat, I think this is correct, too many combinations, payouts going to be nice. Yeah, I agree. I don't think you're going to see too many chop pots. I think with this many outliers, and you want to have a lot of lineups tonight. Like I said, I'm not into building the $180 for a single lineup this week. I'm not even excited about cash games or anything like that because it's going to be a lot of things that you can go up against here. I really am more excited about how we're going to mix and match some of these guys. So what about you, Dean? You got mine now. I've given you all my Colts. You can start on that side if you want, or if you want to go with Titans. But who are some of your conviction plays or takes, if you will, the guys that stand out?
Yeah, I like Davis a good bit. I think, he's cheap enough, and I think he's got plenty of upside. We've seen the upside flashed here and there. As far as this game, like the total of 48.5, I like the under. Like I think I know this year is supposed to bet the over and everything. I feel like it's going to be one of those throwback Thursday games. We shall see, like maybe 23-17 or something like that. They're talking in the chat about the Tennessee defense and captain. I have not got there. I guess we can talk about defense as a whole in general. The Colts collectively a better defense than the Tennessee side. Tennessee this season, for what it's worth, but 10 sacks all season long. The Colts have not, as great they've been defensively. And I guess it's worth looking, worth exploring, and you never really know. it's hard to sort of see how good a team may or may not be because, based upon what sort of offenses they faced. And the Colts this year have faced Jacksonville, Minnesota, the Jets, the Bears. Stop me when you hear a good offense. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Detroit, and Baltimore. And even Baltimore's not good right now. Like, they really haven't faced anybody, but they've been great. They've been an amazing defense. We talked about it before as far as yielding fantasy points. So I have a hard time gauging, like, if they are this good. I still think they're a good unit, but I don't know if they're as good as the numbers suggest, which, again, kind of has me pumping the brakes a little bit on Tennessee. But at the same time, I feel more confident in Henry getting 25 touches. I feel more confident in Tannehill being good, despite the fact like Indianapolis has just completely shut down quarterbacks all season long, yielding the least amount of fantasy points, DK points per game to quarterbacks. But Tannehill might be one of the best quarterbacks they've faced all season long. And he's been efficient, and he's got the weapons to work with as well, too. So I guess that has me leaning more towards the Tennessee guys. The Indianapolis guys, like I said, Jonathan Taylor, I'm not hot on, and the price is egregious. But, like, egregious price is what you're supposed to gravitate to in tournaments, especially ones that are top-heavy. We saw Taylor had that fumble last week, and once he had that fumble that resulted in a touchdown for Baltimore, it really turned that game. He played, 30% of the snaps that game. Wilkins is I think Hines is probably the best option amongst the three, but I don't know if you need any. And I'm curious what sort of rules you're implementing as far as, like, I'm only playing one Indianapolis running back or at least one, but no more than one. What are your thoughts on that as far as, like, if you're going to roll out, you're going to build a bunch of lineups, you have a rule for Indy running backs? Because I feel like one's going to get there. One should get there.
Yeah.
I don't know if two will.
Yeah, so I'm leaning, like I said already, with Wilkins, but I have a rule set up for the majority for at most one. But what I'll do is in those Indy onslaughts or ones where I got Indy just crushing, I don't mind having two in that. So then I'll open it up to at most two and just see what it looks like. And like I said, again, go through them as I'm building them. Because if they smash, I definitely think there's a path for two of them to get there. One of them does the damage early. It could certainly be that way. Then it makes sense. Obviously, then the other side's easy to run back because you want Tennessee pass catchers. You're playing it as if Indy's out ahead. You can leave a lot of money on the table that way as well. I built a little double kicker lineup here for the folks. Just we're chiming in. You can pretty much trade whoever you want at that point. And this could easily be one of those Thursday night games, as somebody mentioned, where 21-18 or something like that, and they both just smash. So, yeah, I don't know. For the running backs, I'm definitely separating them there. I don't mind your take, but I was hand building a little bit earlier as well, Dean, and a lot of lineups seem to end on like 9,000 or 9,400, like somewhere in that range, where it's like Jonathan Taylor is who people I think are still clicking in there. So I actually don't think this is that bad, showing 33%. It's just not someone I love. I don't think you're getting that unique with him. We'll see what it actually shakes out as, but I think it is going to be Hines, like you said, would be a more interesting play. And then I think Wilkins just fits, and you can do a lot with him. Another thing I noticed in hand building, some people are probably out there building less than 10 or maybe 2 or 3 lineups will notice this. A lot of them also seem to end on like 5.8 to 6 grand in the flex for whatever reason. And then with these certain expensive captains, back to what we were talking about earlier, and what ends up happening is then you have Wilkins, Burton, TY. So you're sort of deciding between those three, and unless you're going to just rotate it and import each one and change that single guy as the Indy pass catcher or running back in the case of Hines for each lineup, it's a little bit trickier. So you got to go back to sort of take your stands. I would be on, Burton, Hines before Hilton, but Hilton can have a breakout game. He hasn't shown anything yet. Why wouldn't he on the Island game? So I'm certainly still mixing them in to my MME pool. It's just if I had to pick between the three, that's sort of the way I'd go, depending on the setup of the lineup build.
I'm willing to concede I don't do a lot of kicker analysis, but I did kind of dive in a little bit. Gostkowski's been horrendous this year. He's 11 of 18, 11 of 19 in the season. If you throw away one game where he was 6 of 6, like he has not had a game with more than one field goal in his last 6 games. Again, I don't know how do you apply that to tonight, and this is all about the one sample. I'm just sort of throwing it out there. I think it's kind of sort of somewhat interesting. And I think Blankenship's probably the better option. But, if you're going to play the route of Tennessee is going to be Indy, they're probably more likely to be kicking field goals at the end if they're ahead. And Indianapolis more likely to go for it in 4th down, like something like that. They're pushing. And it's not in a dome. I prefer in a dome as far as kickers. But, they're professionals. They should be fine. I prefer Blankenship in the old vacuum. But, if you want to play them both and just you're playing for like a 2017 game, are you playing defenses in that instance? Or let's just talk about defenses because the chat's talking about them. And defense, at least you have the early screenshot. There's some added value to that, I suppose. You're up 10 points, you're up 20 points out the gate. You're looking pretty good.
That's about it, I think. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not too excited about the defenses this evening. I think they're okay. They're playable, but more than anything, they're just going to muck things up for me. I think they put up around like 8. And, did the guys around him, around the defense, outscore him, right? Do you prefer Mo Alley Cox to the Colts?
Yeah, I guess the issue for me is like neither defense is someone I'm excited about. The one thing I do like Tennessee a little bit more just because they would go with the fact of, with Phillip Rivers, he can make some big mistakes. Tannehill's actually looked pretty decent. So that one's, but defenses is always just so high variance, and it's almost like play the opposite. We see it all the time on main slate where everyone's on a high-end defense, and it's the other side of it ends up getting there. Defenses, are very tricky to predict. So I would make sure just to make sense of it with your lineup. If you were going to start with the Tennessee Titans in your captain slot, if guys are serious out there and doing it, I don't hate it. I just would make sure you build the rest accordingly. So maybe then you do go with Gostkowski or Henry or someone like that you're still going to say that if the defense is putting you in short field situations, what does that look like? Does that mean they're up huge and they want to run more later on in the game? Does that set them up for field goals at the end of the half or something like that? So you just want to make sure if you're doing that, you're building accordingly. You could still, though, this is one thing we talk about all the time, in Showdown especially, you can have the defense against the quarterback. It can happen really easily that they just, a quick pick six, now you're really in screenshot territory, Dean, because you've got the 10 points plus all the extras from the pick and the touchdown. But, Phillip Rivers was on the field for one throw. The game just began. He's going to come back right into the game and play again. So that's a spot where you could still do that. You don't have to be afraid of it on the other side, versus on a classic slate, we don't see that very often.
Yeah, I'd argue there's certain scenarios where you'd almost want, if you can have your quarterback throw a pick six to start the game, it could be good. And also there was the old cheat code last year when just with Jameis Winston against his defense, there's great correlation with that as well too. And also huge. I mean, for the most, the correlation obviously matters, but for Showdown, I loosen up my correlation thought process. I assume you do that as well. Like, I'm not as strict on because goofy things happen in one game scenarios. That's it.
Well, absolutely. I actually think there's, been some stuff this year come out. It's crazy to think we're already in week 10 here, but there's been some stuff that's come out as far as research is concerned. And, everyone, that's a bad way to build a lineup. But I actually think in showdowns like this, I don't, yes, there's probably some actual bad ways of doing it. But what I'm saying is I do think it's more to your point of anything goes, because we've seen some crazy stuff. We've seen the running back from the other team, and then 5 guys in the flex of the other team win. Like, literally anything could end up happening. It all depends on how the game goes. And for that, it's really tough to imagine certain scenarios, but we've seen some crazy scenarios take down Showdown. And that's really the other fact of it, a way to get different and unique, to not chop these pots where it's 500K up top. And then, what is the second night? I'm looking at it here. It's right away 150, 75. I mean, that's in a 137,000 person tournament. I just think it's, something you got to look out for. And there's always ways to be unique, and in Showdown more so than anywhere, anything goes.
If I could summarize what you said in 4 succinct words, it would be play whoever you want. Right? Is that how that
exactly
goes?
Yeah, we're looking for those, man. Keep putting your Blender impressions in on Twitter. We got.
How was that? Was that like a 3 on a 10-point scale? I don't know what the Russian judge is going to give me, but
let the chat vote. But I definitely think that it was a good one. We've seen some lately on Twitter. What was it? Ricky D, Curtis Painter guy, he won the Millionaire Maker. He posted one, and I thought it was pretty funny. Just the more the merrier. I think it's funny, and I know Blender likes playing along, so I do like it.
What are you most common guy jumping in your lineup, or I guess guys if you're playing the defenses in captain? What do you have as far as your most popular captains right now?
Right now, for me, just looking at it here, I've got Corey Davis, AJ Brown, and then one guy we didn't talk about yet, who I've taken some a couple shots with here, is actually Ferkser. Right? We didn't talk a lot about Ferkser, but Micole Pruitt is out. They do like mixing it in with Adam Humphries out a little bit more 2 tight end sets. He's another guy that might be, again, it's one of those things we just talked about, just joking about the kicker, and the kickers are a little bit more, like Blankenship costs more to put in the captain. I know it's, it sounds like all jokes here, but it's not. It's a Thursday Night Island game. We've seen this before, but sometimes you wait around for these, offset plays, a guy like Ferkser, who's been getting some targets lately, and then you think, okay, it's going to be his game. But I like mixing him in there still. It's just like I said, sometimes that doesn't work out because there is plays like defenses and kickers that just get points naturally throughout, that they end up just scoring more than all these punt plays we want to take tries on.
We got Jordan in chat, who was probably the one that most likely to, gives the most legitimate grade on my play, whoever you want. But he said it was awful. So, it probably was. I'm not known for voices. I don't know what I'm known for, but it's definitely not voices. I tried. I can't get very. It was too pitchy. No, not
I want him to run a contest for those of you that don't know. It's an incredible course, the Theory of DFS. He's the co-producer, co-author of, if you will, masterclass, audio masterclass. It's incredible. You guys should check it out. But I want him to run a contest for the best blender impression to get a version of that course. Maybe RotoGrinders will hop in too. I just think it'd be funny, right? He talks about it all the time. It's just who he is, man. It's the best voice out there. I like it. I got no problems with it. And the stuff he talks about, you can learn a lot from him. So whether you like the voice or don't, it's incredible knowledge and information. I get better with it all the time just listening to it. New podcast with him and Eric, who I referenced earlier, is incredible. 5 episodes into that. So there you go, Jordan, my guy. Got you some airtime here and some shout outs. Appreciate all you do, man. But back to the action here, Dean. Talk to me. Who are your guys, man? You just asked me for mine. Give me a Ferkser take, Batson takes, and then who you're using in captain tonight for your lineups.
Well, we're talking about, blenders catchphrases. One of mine, we live in the world of a salary cap, so I'm much more likely to play Ferkser than Jonnu Smith. Tennessee probably, without Humphreys, without their other tight end, they're probably more likely to roll out with 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, Jonnu and Ferkser. Yeah, Jonnu is certainly fine, but he's also, he's been touchdown dependent this season as well too, and he's a good red zone target as well. He's a good athlete, but I don't know if I can get there. Of course, in tournaments you can do whatever you want, but dollar for dollar, I think Ferkser is just a better play, and it kind of makes other things work. I was sort of kind of half joking when I mentioned Cameron Batson, but like for real, he's $200 and he's going to be on the field for maybe like 25-30% of the snaps, give or take, depending on how many, how much 12 personnel they run. Raymond is $800 more. I know we talked about him pre-show. Raymond, he hasn't had a lot of opportunities of what we've seen from him. He's shown a big A-dot, so maybe he's just like one explosion play and you're there. That pays up the salary for sure. If he catches a 30-yard touchdown, you're in the money. Anything after that is just like, what do they say? The icing on the cake. There you go. It crossed off the cliche for that one. Do we like McNichols at $200, or we like Batson at $200? We're gonna get one of these $200 cheapies on Tennessee. Who do you prefer?
Probably Batson. I'll take some more shots that way. If Tennessee gets there with the running back, it could be McNichols, but I just, like I said, for this game, this setup, I do like mixing up these guys a little bit more. That would be another group I would set up. So you're Batson and Raymond, max of 1. If they both go off and have a huge game, I guess the one thing I would say, I'm just circling back now to captain slots. What are your thoughts on using quarterbacks this slate? Because typically it's not as it's commonly used, but if you go back to whatever you want to call the data size, I don't think it's massive, but enough showdown slates now. Typically it's not ideal, but we've already talked about all of these possibilities and all of these names that you can use. I actually don't think it's a terrible idea. Adoree Jackson's out for Tennessee. You could definitely have a guy like Phillip Rivers, I think, in the captain. He already spaces the ball. Give me the
scenario Rivers captain gets there. Like, what is the scenario? He throws touchdowns to 3 different guys. Maybe 250, 300 yards, something like that.
I think you could, let's say it's a lower scoring game, but I'm talking like 21-14 and he passes them all. Let's go with it right here. Just have a look.
Okay.
All right. You can load them up. We're going to say TY finally has, a touchdown. It's just one bomb and he gets in. Burton gets a touchdown and gets in. Who else do we got here? And then he throws to the running backs quite a bit. So we'll use Wilkins for this scenario. You've got 92-50 on the other side. I mean, you could use a guy like Tannehill and then go to his pass catchers and you got money left on the table and that'd be fine. Or you can just go and say, I'm going to pick up a couple receivers here and see what this looks like. You got Jonnu Smith and it goes with Tannehill, who we just mentioned.
Yeah, or I guess you can play Henry as well, right? If you wanted to.
Definitely. Yeah, you could say that, the passer interference didn't work out. Everyone's on the A.J. Brown game. Boom, there's 7,700 left over. $100 shy of Corey Davis. But again, get unique. Leave some money on the table. You can go back. You could throw in Jonnu Smith, leave $700. These are lineups that you're setting up there that are showing you that you could definitely run something like this. And this is still some pretty good players as far as raw points go, right? This is, a tight end with Doyle out. I know Moe Ali Cox is in, but you've got Burton, Hilton. Everyone's expecting this bounce back game. Noah Dory Jackson, I mentioned, it'd be a spot where maybe he could get there. Wilkins, the guy that we talked about already, has actually been having more usage than Jonathan Taylor. Weird. Henry scores one and Jonnu scores one. Here's your 21-14 game. Rivers is attached to all 3 touchdowns. Henry scores, Jonnu scores. Because Henry takes one away from Tannehill, you don't want him in the lineup. And then boom, there you are. That lineup works for everything we just talked about, in a 21-14 setup. Again, this is getting way too aggressive trying to predict the score. That's not
just want to see how it's worth,
it's just to show you guys the idea exactly and talk through what a lineup construction looks like. To me, that's sort of what you would see happen for that scenario to play out. Will this be duped? Maybe. It looks pretty common, but again, by how many? And I don't necessarily think this is going to be the most duped lineup of the night or something where you're going to be splitting it 100+ ways. It just doesn't look like that to me. Again, maybe it will be. I just don't see it with $700 on the table. No AJ Brown, setting it up a little bit differently. No Tannehill. He's 74% owned.
It's a big number.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So no Tannehill, no Brown. I don't think this is going to be one of the most duped lineups out there. And I think there is a scenario where something like this could easily play out. So just a one example to show it off.
Speaking to the parity of this slate, I referenced those 200 laps I ran earlier just for as far as captains on DK. And there's nobody jumping off the page. Tannehill at 28%, Brown at 24%, Rivers 21%, Henry at 16%, then Davis and Ferkser and Gostkowski, and then Batson. There's no guy that's just egregiously priced that has a great opportunity that here you put this person in captain and you get everything you want. So like you were saying, I don't think we're going to see a ton of whatever lineups are duplicated on a normal slate for Showdown. I think it'll be less this evening because there's a lot of confusion as far as who's going to be the guy in Indianapolis. There's really no clear cut, based upon the price. So basically just play the lineups you like. But as far as being a little bit different, what is the most amount you're willing to leave on the table? Again, there's general rules and then this slate specifically. What do you have right now as far as the most amount you'll leave on the table for DK tonight?
I think 5,600 is my most right now.
It's a big number. Yeah. And nobody probably has it.
Well, yeah. You're playing it for, that's in a lineup that's an onslaught basically, where I'm just saying it's going to be, 2 indie guys, 2 indie running backs that are, that makes it cheaper already. The defense, the kicker, you can fill in whoever you want on the other side for Tennessee. But the idea is that, you don't just go up to the top 2. Think about this too. Even if people are building that lineup, what do? They see all this money left and they immediately go up and say it has to be Henry and Brown, or it has to be Tannehill and Brown. And then they still have money on the table, but they don't have, they don't play it for what actually could happen. The reason that Indianapolis is smashing them is likely because those 2 guys are doing nothing. So that's how you got to look at it. We're talking about the Colts defense being involved, 2 Colts running backs and their kicker. Yeah, they could get the most raw points for what's left of the Tennessee side. But my point is more that I don't, the reason that these guys are going off the other way and smashing them is because those guys are having a terrible game. Maybe it's a pick. And now, you got a guy like Tannehill sitting at negative points to start out the game and then fighting his way back from there. So you really are building it for those scenarios. I just think that for most, it's not really necessarily how they're looking at. They're just maxing out whatever they can.
Start loading up some questions there in chat. We're here for the next 7 minutes or so, give or take. I did want to say I want to give FanDuel a head nod. Obviously their game is not as diverse to figure out. And it doesn't cost you anything to put the best player in at MVP, which is why if you're running the optimals on FanDuel, Tannehill's popping in as the guy that's, of course you can be different in tournaments and you probably should be different in tournaments because, that optimals is not exactly how the thing plays out, but only 3 guys are popping up. Tannehill, Rivers, and Henry as far as the FanDuel build. Overall, trying to see who else, dollar for dollar, Davis and Brown. It's the usual suspects. You mentioned Burton. Burton's kind of interesting, especially by the goal line. We've seen him run it in a couple times. I'm fairly certain he was a quarterback in college for Florida. So maybe he has the ability to throw the ball as well to some degree still. But he does some different things, and, he's pretty reasonably priced. And we talked about, Doyle being out. Yeah, they had Mo like Cox as well. But, he's one of those guys that I'm working in that sound like you're interested as well. Hit the like button, subscribe there and chat. We'll answer your questions in a second, start loading them up. You talked about this guy before the show, DeMichael Harris. They say DeMichael Harris is going to go off, according to Jorge Lopez. Is he going to go off tonight? Is he going to get on the field? I think that's the first question.
That's the question. I was really much more high on him when it was Mo Alley Cox going to be out, but I also don't want to completely ignore the guy just because of that. You never know, right? Mo Alley Cox is active, likely to play, of course. With that being said, but you never know what's going to happen. There's, potential for re-injury. There's potential for, they had plays in line. It's a short week. They had, this guy lined up. So I don't love DeMichael. I think we had more of a debate on how his name became DeMichael versus Michael, but I think that the thought process would be that it's a guy like that you're putting in, then you're not going to have to get too much further out the board, right? Like if you're going with that, make the lineup accordingly around it, but then you don't got to get too crazy beyond that, right? So I wouldn't, have a bunch of them or anything like that, but I definitely like the call. I have him in a few of mine here. I was just looking, and now he brought up 60-1 for the first touchdown. I'm just trying to go see what my book has for the odds. Sometimes you get these things in chat that stand out and something crazy just happens and you don't want to miss the boat, right? You got that FOMO, Dean, the fear of missing out. So
sure.
I'm going to look at that now as we speak. Is there anybody else that you had down there that you were thinking about or any other thoughts as far as FanDuel goes?
Where I'm at right now, as far as the sportsbook thing, I can't play. Unfortunately, I can't dabble in that just yet. Hopefully soon enough. I've been roving around from state to state, and I keep landing in the wrong state that does not have sports gambling. But yeah, you're asking me as far as cheapies that I should consider playing. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, just anybody else you have. We talked about a lot. You mentioned some
Ferkser
takes. Raymond's. You mentioned Ferkser, and you also mentioned earlier who's the other running back again?
The backup running back for Tennessee you're talking about.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had more on him that you want to talk about. And
I'm not excited about
that's
it.
Why.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not playing him because I like him. I'm playing because he might, work somebody, make something else that I want to, make work. And that's just how I kind of got to get there from a salary cap reason. But by the way, you asked about the Tannehill and captain, traditional thought, traditional rule is like, if I'm going to put my quarterback in captain, it's probably because they have legs and Tannehill has legs and Rivers doesn't. So I know we kind of went through the exercise of Rivers, but yeah, he could get there. It's more of a scenic route. And it's also a game, a game script that's less likely. But Tannehill's a guy that, theoretically, he's not obviously like Kyler or Lamar, but he's a guy that can run for 40 yards. He can run in a touchdown or two. So I think he can get there as far as captain. I'm okay with that. And I know some of the data, and I feel like this is the Showdown stuff that Eric's been doing. Traditionally, quarterbacks aren't the most ideal to play in a captain, but I think you could there's two different buckets of legs and no legs. At least that's what I do in my head. Is that incorrect, or is that kind of the way you look at it as well?
No, I look at it similar. The other part, though, that stood out to what you just said there with Eric's article was, again, it likes wide receiver 1. And I know A.J. Brown's extremely popular tonight, but I think if you just, look at it contrarian a little bit and go to the other side with Indianapolis, what's funny, though, is that the challenge is figuring out who is that wide receiver 1
I don't know.
For Indianapolis, because, well, on paper, it may be T.Y. Hilton, and to everyone who knows the name, certainly has not been the case. And there's a lot of guys you could make an argument for with Pittman. There, you've got, some people want to go back to the well with Marcus Johnson, who was going to be popular last week with guys out. And then you've got Pascal as well, right? So who is figuring out who?
Not to cut you off, but I just pulled up the DK Sportsbook, and we have a limited time here. But okay, so this is to your point. According to the DK, the over/under for receiving yards: Hilton 34.5, Johnson 30.5, Pascal 40.5, Pittman 31.5. Burton 29.5. What do I do with that? They're basically saying we don't know either. That's all they're saying. We have no idea.
Well, exactly that. And like you said, the one that I think is interesting, and it's been mentioned in the chat a couple of times. Someone even just said it. R. Stanley 788 said Pittman is my favorite play on the slate. I'm definitely feeling that too. I think it's, the time to show off a rookie would be now on a slate like this. Again, keep talking about the island game. It's not, he doesn't have any huge ownership or anything like that I'm too concerned with, that it's going to blow me away that I can't play that guy. I'm just looking at FanDuel's. He's 15%. Yes, there's Marcus Johnson for 13 and there's other guys there, but I just think it's, you go with who you want, right? And that's sort of, I think of this in a scenario where they could be using him. And I think he also fits pretty much every type of lineup build, in the sense that if they're down, they can get him in the game. If they're up, it could be because they wanted to showcase him or feature him a little, or it's his time to shine. So there's a lot of ways. I'm looking more for guys like that I can use to be able to get from both angles, right? Not, where I'm building my lineups for one side or the other in those builds that I talked about earlier. I still like these mashup lineups where, like I said, you're using guys that can get there either way. And he's certainly one of those, I think.
Corey, this has got to be a season-long question. Corey Davis versus Curtis Samuel. I'm looking at that. Samuel plays the Bucs this week, for what it's worth. You're probably not prepared for that question. Do you have a thought on it? Samuel might
I
run
guess,
the ball a bit.
Yeah, I'm only going to think about it from a DFS perspective, and I would probably lean to go with Samuel just because you've got everyone on Mike Davis this week. CMC's out. They were sort of using him as a gadget guy. Tampa Bay is a little bit tougher to go up against. And then you've got, that sort of short check down that he can just do something with. Plus we saw him catch one for like 40 yards the other week. So I think I would lean Samuel there. I know it's off topic a little bit, but I like Davis for tonight because it's an island game, single game slate. But I think if that was the question for season long, I'd risk it and go with Sam. Also, Anderson is going to be popular too. So I really do like squeezing the middle there with a guy like Samuel.
Are you okay playing Titans D tonight? DK single entry GPP captain spot.
Sure. Yeah, we talked about it. That's, the spot I like up against Phillip Rivers with a bunch of these unknowns that we just have no idea. I think it's a possibility. I just, like I said, I lean other guys more in the captain than the defense. I just want to make sure if you are doing that, you're building it accordingly.
Yeah, my lineups are not complete yet. We have to step aside and make our lineups. I assume you do as well. I assume everybody that's watching is making lineups too. I was going to ask you, though, I don't know if you know where you're at. But as of right now, 30 minutes until kickoff, or 35, I guess if you want to get all technical, is there somebody you're well overweight, well over the field, and somebody you're well under the field? You taking any stands as of right now?
I'll pull it up right now, Dean, just for you.
Well, it's for the people out there too, not just me. I don't want to be selfish. I'll share it. We'll share the information.
Yeah, Corey Davis, 78% as of right now.
It's a big number. Yeah. Anybody under that you notice? Or any direct? You don't just X anybody out?
Derrick Henry, I'm under on for sure.
All right, fair. Is it because of the matchup, or you think it's just he's going to be so heavily owned and you're just taking a stand?
No, I just think there's so much, like I just talked about earlier with the money spent and the ability to spend it. People will just naturally draw to the raw points and the fact that it's, I got to spend the money somewhere. I'm okay with not spending it. So there's lots of other ways you can go. It's not even to go to McNichols or anything like that. It's just, I'm just looking at it from the perspective of indie pass games. So just the way that my builds came out, it would more likely be Corey Davis that I'm just plugging in that spot and hoping it goes to him versus a guy like Henry. Watch question. Now. We'll see now where he lands on the 1 yard line like 2 times tonight or something. And it's Henry bangs in a couple.
Trick question. Your favorite Colts running back tonight?
Mine is Wilkins. I've talked about it. Yeah, I like Wilkins.
Yeah. All right. If you guys like what you're watching, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe as well. We do these all the time as far as a showdown. And of course, Tambo, you follow myself on Sunday afternoon. Do you know who your guest is going to be? You're working with this week?
It's Noto, man. My guy Notorious as far as the media schedule shows. So I always love getting on with him, you guys. It's a really good show. If you guys don't check it out already, Dean's before us. I was on with Grant last week. It was a lot of fun. I didn't know how the dynamic was going to be because I'm used to him just making fun of you the whole time. So I said,
"This jerk, isn't he?"
No, he's awesome, man. It was a good show. We had a great one. And the thing about Noto and I getting on, it's even when we do our golf show together, it's typically, he's more of a cash, higher dollar, single entry. Let's get after it. And I'm looking for all these different ways to go about. So there's a really good dynamic there with that show with the two of us together. So everyone should check that out. And then Christy and Kevin and the guys leading right in till lock. I think that's another good one I always leave it on afterwards as I finish out my lineup. So definitely check us out on everything we're doing here over at RotoGrinders, guys. Producer Evan will drop the link in one more time. I'll put them on the spot to get you guys the link set up for $5 off. Hope you enjoyed the show. You can find me on Twitter at ToeTag and Tambo. Take us away, Dean.
Oh, I thought you were signing us out of here. I was just going to chill.
No, you got to sign us out, man. That's you.
Sunday, of course, 10 o'clock to 10:10 if you want to get all technical. Myself, I'm working with Grant and Cardi this week, I believe. And you and Noto are just going to be sweating your golf the whole time and talking football too. That'll be a fun show for sure. Yeah. Hopefully you guys have something to sweat by then. I guess that the rules say you can start sweating on Sunday, or depending
We'll wait till the afternoon. We'll wait. It's going to be close to there actually because they've set it up differently this year. But yeah, no, it should be fun.
All right, we got to make our lineups. Much appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe, the whole deal. He's Tambo. I was Dean. That was Devin producing the show. This was definitely football. We're out of here. Holler.